As I move on with talking about Dr. Roy Walford, I want to talk about the makeup of a calorie restricted diet that works. So, the Okinawan diet and its health implication, it is a caloric restricted, nutrient dense diet, as are pretty much all of the diets of the blue zones, but there's no effort made to make them calorically restricted, and one of the things is that the centenarians of the blue zones, uh, they exert themselves to burn off extra calories, which also leads to increased muscle tone and strength, etc. So, residents of Okinawa, the southernmost prefecture of Japan, are known for their long average life expectancy, high numbers of centenarians, and accompanying low risk of age associated diseases. Much of the longevity advantage in Okinawa is thought to be related to a healthy lifestyle, particularly the traditional diet, which is low in calories yet nutritionally dense, especially with regard to phytonutrients. Okay, and this is going to come up when it talks about what are called caloric restriction mimetics. I'm going to cover that in the next article. In the form of antioxidants and flavonoids. Research suggests that diets associated with a reduced risk of chronic diseases are similar to the traditional Okinawan diet. Remember, and they are, the Mediterranean diet is very similar. Remember how Dr. Walford kept talking about unknowns. These are the unknowns. These are the things that were not properly understood and still aren't fully understood. But there's nothing mysterious about them. I don't think we're ever going to understand everything 100%. I mean, we do have human brains. We do have primate brains. There's a limit to what we can understand. But that doesn't mean we should stop trying, of course. Okay, so that is vegetable and fruit heavy. Therefore, phytonutrient and antioxidant rich. Not only vegetable and fruit heavy, but spice heavy. Okay? It's reduced in meat, refined grains, saturated fat, sugar, salt, and full fat dairy products. Remember, most of the carbohydrate in the Okinawan diet comes from yams or sweet potatoes. Particularly purple sweet potatoes, which have the similar antioxidants to blueberries. Many of the characteristics of the diet in Okinawa are shared with other healthy dietary patterns, such as the traditional Mediterranean diet or the modern DASH diet. Features such as low levels of saturated fat, high antioxidant intake, and low glycemic load in these diets are likely contributing to a decreased risk for cardiovascular disease, some cancers, and other chronic diseases through multiple mechanisms, including reduced oxidative stress. A comparison of the nutrient profiles of the three dietary patterns shows that the traditional Okinawan diet is the lowest in fat intake, particularly in terms of saturated fat, and highest in carbohydrate intake, remember, from sweet potatoes, in keeping with the very high intake of antioxidant-rich yet calorie-poor orange-yellow root vegetables such as sweet potatoes and green leafy vegetables. Deeper analyses of the individual components of the Okinawan diet reveal that many of the traditional foods, herbs, or spices consumed on a regular basis could be labeled functional foods, and indeed are currently being explored for their potential health-enhancing properties. People might remember when I covered the dietary wisdom of the great apes, I pointed out how chimpanzees will consume medicinal herbs on just to consume them in their regular diet. That was discovered by Jane Goodall. And I'm going to move on to what are called calorie restriction mimetics. Now, this is from Dr. Craig Wilcox. I'm going to go into the Wilcox brothers. The Wilcox brothers are the ones, this is from 2009, so this is new, but the Wilcox brothers are the ones that created the Okinawan Protocol. But what I want people to understand, if you're going to follow the Okinawan Protocol, you should take into consideration how are you going to follow this protocol in a way that is closer to the Okinawans and farther from, say, a Western diet. Okay? So I'm going to move on and talk about caloric mimetics, or caloric restriction mimetics. So this is also from Dr. Wilcox. This is Dr. Wilcox's brother. This is the pair of them are the ones that created the Okinawan Protocol. One of them's a pharmacist, one of them's a doctor. I forget which one is which. This is Bradley Wilcox, not Craig Wilcox. Caloric restriction, mimetics, and healthy aging in Okinawa, controversies and clinical implications. Okay. Recent findings: caloric restriction is a research priority for the U.S. National Institute on Aging. However, little is known regarding health effects in humans. Some caloric restriction-related outcomes, such as cause-specific mortality and lifespan, are not practical for human clinical trials. Therefore, epidemiological data on older Okinawans who experienced a caloric restriction-like diet for close to half their lives are of special interest. The nutritional data support mild caloric restriction. Only 10 to 15% caloric restriction. You don't have to go crazy with it. And high consumption of foods that may mimic the biological effects of caloric restriction, including sweet potatoes, marine-based carotenoid-rich foods, that's like seaweed, and turmeric. Phenotypic evidence is consistent with caloric restriction, including short stature, low body weight, and lean BMI. Less age-related chronic disease, including cardiovascular disease, cancer, and dementia, and longer lifespan, mean and maximum. Summary: both caloric restriction and traditional Okinawan functional foods with caloric restriction mimetic properties likely had roles in the extended health span and lifespan of the Okinawans. More research is needed on the health consequences of caloric restriction and foods with caloric restriction mimetic properties to identify possible nutritional interventions for healthy aging. So I'm going to talk briefly about the blue zones and what they call the Power 9. This is the 9 things that will help you reach 100, according to the scientists that did the research in the blue zones. 1, move naturally, is the world's longest lived people do not pump iron. This is not true, because in Loma Linda they do, and they do join gyms. So move, I would say. 2, purpose. The Okinawans call it ikigai, and the Nicoyans call it plan de vida. For both, it translates to why I wake up in the morning. Knowing your sense of purpose is worth up to 7 years of extra life expectancy. Downshift. Even people in the blue zones experience stress. Stress leads to chronic inflammation associated with every major age-related disease. What the world's longest lived people have that others do not are routines to shed the stress. Okinawans take a few moments each day to remember their ancestors. Adventists pray. Aikirians take a nap. And Sardinians do happy hour. 4, 80% rule. Hara-hachi-bu. The Okinawan 2,500-year-old Confucian mantra said before, but this has to do with caloric restriction, okay, said before meals reminds them to stop eating when their stomachs are 80% full. The 20% gap between not being hungry and feeling full could be the difference between losing weight or gaining it. People in the blue zones eat their smallest meal in the late afternoon or early evening, and then they do not eat any more the rest of the day. The plant slant. Beans, including fava, black, soy, and lentils, are the cornerstone of most centenarian diets. I'm doing this to show you what these diets are made up of. Meat, mostly pork. I don't really think that pork is the greatest one. And also with the Loma Lindans, they obviously don't eat pork because it's against their religion. And they're also mostly vegetarian and vegan. But so the reason pork is eaten is most of these blue zones, the people are exceedingly poor. And it's a very low-cost meat because pigs are very efficient at turning garbage into protein. So servings, so they only eat only five times per month. Serving sizes are 3 to 4 ounces, about the size of a deck of cards. Wine, I don't agree with wine because any alcohol can be carcinogenic, but they promote the use of wine, except for the Adventists, of course, except for the Adventists. What I would suggest instead of wine would be something like a low caffeinated beverage rich in polyphenols like cocoa or maybe thyme tea or peppermint tea or something like that. So you're getting the benefits of those things. And remember, I'm suggesting that, but I'm not a doctor, I'm not a physician, I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a nutritionist, and this video is for entertainment purposes only. But as I'm saying, I would not recommend drinking highly caffeinated beverages such as coffee, and I would not recommend drinking alcoholic beverages because alcohol is a carcinogen. Okay, so the trick is to drink 1 to 2 glasses per day, preferably Sardinian, blah, 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 with friends, blah, blah, blah. 7. Belong all but 5 of the 263 centenarians interviewed belong to some faith-based community. So all but 5. So they all belong to some faith-based community. Denomination does not seem to matter, although I showed it kind of did. Research shows that attending faith-based services 4 times per month will add 4 to 14 years of life expectancy. 8. Loved ones first. Successful centenarians in the blue zones put their families first. This means keeping aging parents and grandparents nearby or in the home. It lowers disease and mortality rates of children in the home too. They commit to a life partner, which can add up to 3 years of life expectancy, and invest in their children with time and love. Right tribe. The world's longest lived people choose or were born into social circles that supported healthy behaviors. Okinawans created moais, groups of 5 friends that are committed to each other. Research from the Framingham study shows that smoking, obesity, happiness, and even loneliness are contagious. So social networks of long-lived people have favorably shaped their health behaviors. Sardinia, okay, and that's what I wanted to cover there. So what I wanted to show you by reading those studies was what a calorically restricted diet or just a diet should be made up of. And it should be made up of predominantly of whole, plant-based foods that are not refined and health-promoting foods that most people know are health-promoting, to be honest. So let's see, this is another interview, and I wanted to cover this, just various interviews. This may be the last video I make of Dr. Walford, simply because I don't want to just go through all of the interviews, because he does repeat himself, but I want to make people understand what he's saying, and understand the health benefits, or definite health benefits of following a lifestyle like this.
I brought my lunch.
Oh, you did? Great.
I've come to see Roy Walford in Venice, California. For 30 years, Dr. Walford has been studying the relationship between food and long life.
Better if it were like whole wheat bread.
Whole wheat bread, because
instead of, I would say that's 2 slices of white bread.
Well, let's see what else you probably don't like this. Sometimes I like something crunchy while I have the sandwich.
Well, pretzels are empty calories.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
How about pickles?
Okay, yeah, that's all right.
This is all just for taste. How do you feel about mustard?
It doesn't add much in the way of calories unless you use a huge amount.
For Walford, watching calories is only one of the keys. He believes if you eat less, you'll live longer, so long as you make sure that what you do eat has high nutritional value. I'm aiming to make a pretty low-cal lunch, no more than 500 calories. You use a lot of calories getting the pickle jar.
Oh, yes, that's the whole point.
This is about it. This is what I could... Now, see, that wouldn't be enough, though. I mean, I'd still be interested more. I'd probably eat 5 or 6 of these pretzels.
Yeah.
And I would take the salt off the pretzels, because I don't like to eat a lot of salt. Then I would have, probably, to make myself feel better, I'd either have about 4 ounces of frozen yogurt, or if I was feeling really health-minded, I'd have an...
Isn't that hilarious that people think frozen yogurt is somehow healthy? That always blows my mind, how people think certain things are healthy. It's like eating Yoplait and thinking it's healthy or something. I don't, it blows my mind.
Apple. Let's say an apple.
Okay.
I'll give myself the benefit of the doubt.
Okay.
Now let's see what kind of nutrition my low-cal lunch delivers.
At the moment, let's see, turkey breast, no skin, roasted is about as close, and you didn't have half a breast, but maybe a quarter of a breast. You had a piece of tomato in that.
Yeah, two little slices.
Okay.
When you add it all up, I did fine on the calories, but that's about all.
What you had is deficient in A, B12, C, E, folic acid, and pantothenic acid. Among minerals...
Now that's interesting. People should take note of that. That this is what people eat for lunch, and it's deficient in pretty much everything.
It's deficient in calcium, copper, magnesium, manganese, and zinc.
And what's that big, tall, yellow one? What's that? I would seem
Well,
to
that
be doing
means it
okay
has a
there.
great deal of sodium.
Oh,
Which you
I'm
don't
doing
want.
fine with the
Yeah,
sodium.
yeah.
Okay.
And you have too much cholesterol because you multiply
Where did I get that from?
by the turkey, probably, yeah.
But here's what goes into Walford's lunch. Every one of his 500 calories packs a high nutrition
So you're going to see what he makes a lunch out of right here.
punch. How did you first get interested in this?
I got interested in this kind of nutrition because it's been known since 1935 that if you keep animals on a very low-calorie diet, but one that is not deficient in vitamins and so forth, you extend their maximum lifespan and their average lifespan.
In the 1960s, Walford, who's a researcher at UCLA Medical School, set out to refine the low-calorie studies. He confirmed that laboratory mice live up to twice the normal age if calorie intake is reduced by up to half. At the same time, he detected intriguing signs of improved health, lower blood pressure, lower insulin and cholesterol, and stronger immune systems. Then in 1991, Walford joined Biosphere 2 as the project doctor. He was part of the team that sealed itself inside a 3-acre greenhouse. The aim was to be self-supporting, to subsist entirely on the miniature ecosystems growing inside. Things didn't turn out as expected. Food production was about 40% short, but for Walford, it was a lucky accident. Like it or not, the team found itself on a low-calorie, high-nutrition diet. The team members went hungry. But in regular medical exams, Walford discovered they were developing the same good health patterns as the lab animals. Biosphere 2 confirms for Walford that a low-calorie, high-nutrition diet is likely to benefit humans, and he's been following it ever since. It sounded pretty good to me. How do you get started?
What you want to do is lower the calorie content so that you lose weight gradually until you're 10 to 20% below your set point, where your set point is defined as what you would weigh normally if you ate just kind of a normal diet.
That sounds like a lot of weight loss. I mean, I'd be a beanpole without the beans, I think. I mean,
Now, I personally believe in the importance of retaining lean muscle mass, okay? Not necessarily, you don't got to be gigantic, but I do think there is a great deal of importance in retaining lean muscle mass, okay? So that's why I don't promote such drastic dropping of calories. But 10 to 15%, that's not that bad.
very sounds severe to me. These lively rhesus monkeys are on just such a severe regimen. I'm visiting Rick Weindrich at the University of Wisconsin. Is this for my protection or for the monkeys?
I think it's mutual for both, yes.
Okay. Weindrich has about 80 monkeys, half on restricted calories, half normal. The study has been running for a decade, and the animals are now 20 years old. Middle age for rhesus monkeys. So there won't be any results on lifespan for a while. Which kind is what's he get?
This guy up above?
The restricted diet is exactly like Walford's. In fact, Rick Weindrich was his student at UCLA.
Here you go, pal.
The monkeys' calories are reduced, but their nutrition is excellent. It's not in any way a starvation diet. So within the next few years, as old age should be approaching, the
Now this may explain, if people remember from the previous video, about how the lemurs had a reduction in gray matter, but these rhesus monkeys did not. It's probably because the lemurs did not have a diet supplemented enough to have the excellent nutrition of these rhesus monkeys, is my guess. That was my guess when I was reading that as well. I think I may have even said that in the previous video.
expectation is that the normally fed group will begin to lose its health, while the calorie-restricted group will stay healthy.
We're starting to see signs of better health in our restricted animals. It's going to really be, shall we say, showtime for these diets over the next 5 years.
Just like Walford's Biosphere team, the monkeys get regular checkups, although they're sedated for some procedures. This is a scan for bone mass, which tends to become reduced with age. They also examine tiny samples of muscle from the monkeys, looking for signs of cellular damage, which normally develops with age. Is this a part of a cell?
This is a component of a cell, and this is the stuff that makes your muscles contract, basically.
This black dot in the muscle of a 4-year-old monkey is damage caused by things called free radicals. Free radicals could explain why eating less helps you stay healthier and live longer. Nutrients from the food we eat get absorbed by every cell of our body. These nutrients normally combine with oxygen to make essential energy-storing chemicals. But an unavoidable byproduct is the production of free radicals, reactive oxygen compounds that damage whatever they hit. The body makes chemicals called antioxidants, which defend against free radicals. But damage still accumulates over the years, leading to all kinds of old age diseases. The exciting thing about Weindrich's study is that while 20-year-old monkeys on normal diets show extensive free radical damage, calorie-restricted monkeys who were the same age look like young kids. So this is a 17-year-old monkey with about the same amount of free radical damage as how old a monkey?
A 4-year-old.
A 17-year-old as healthy as a 4-year-old.
Yes.
Others aren't.
That's
Weindrich
right.
is also pursuing the free radical theory with a large-scale mouse study. One bunch is on a restricted diet, and one is... Oh, God. I'll tell you something that I see right away. These are really active, and these are just sitting around. These are senior citizen mice, about 2 years old, and they're on a normal diet. And these are on calorie restriction. But Weindrich also has 4 other groups being fed normal diets, plus some special extra ingredients. He's adding combinations of the antioxidant supplements like vitamin C, E, and beta-carotene that so many of us are taking now. The results so far? Not very encouraging. Antioxidant dietary supplements are no substitute for calorie restriction. They don't seem to affect lifespan one way or the other.
The best survival at this point in time is Group 5, our calorically restricted animals.
Aren't taking any supplements.
No, they're not. They're just...
So far taking supplements, if you have a normal diet, or any kind of diet, it does.
That's not accurate because their feed is supplemented. If it's supposed to be nutritionally adequate, their feed would be supplemented. That's why I find that ridiculous that they're saying that they're not taking supplements. And when I go over Dr. Bruce Ames, we'll learn more about the triage theory of aging and disease, because those monkeys are on supplements through the feed.
Doesn't make you live longer. So far, and you have a lot of time to go yet on this. But so far, you're living the longest.
just plain old caloric restriction.
With high nutrition.
Right. But again, it's early. So come back in a year, please.
Yeah.
That nutrition obtained in the animal feed is obtained through supplementation. The feed itself is a supplement.
Well, meanwhile, I'm taking the pills.
Me too.
So, Alan, I made 4 servings in the wooden bowl. This is 1 serving.
Now, this is why servings of food for people like me and other vegans that follow calorically restricted diets, this is why our serving sizes are so large.
It's about 500, 550 calories.
This is 1 serving? This is a lot of food.
That would be 1 serving, yes. So,
And this is equal to that sandwich I made?
more or less, it's about equal in calorie content to your turkey sandwich.
It's very good. How old do you think you're going to be eventually?
Well, older than I would be. I've just been on this diet for about 10 years or so, maybe a little more, so I certainly didn't start when I was young. If my destiny on a normal diet had been to live to be 90...
And that's important to understand. A lot of people like to point out that the guy died of Lou Gehrig's disease, or ALS, you know. But what you need to take into consideration, he only started the diet after he was a very, as Maria Konovalenko would say, an old animal.
Then on the diet, I should add another 15 or 20 years. So that would put me out to be 110, starting at 60.
That's where it would put me if I started around now. 110. See, I always thought it'd be nice to live to 106. 110 is even better. This doesn't look so appetizing anymore. I got plenty of crunch. I didn't need the pretzels. And this wouldn't be bad for dessert, or am I denied dessert now?
No, that would be fine, sure. An apple is good dessert.
Yeah, you would, your heart would sink if I took out the frozen yogurt, probably.
Well, no, yours would.
So this is Christopher Rowland again, and this is another, I wouldn't call it an interview, a documentary type thing about Roy Walford, and I think it's important that people hear what he has to say.
Bed and heard all of Marlowe's Faustus being played. So I went down to the library the first time I went, let's say, to the public library, and took out Marlowe's Faustus and read it, and was enchanted, because I think Faustus was really looking for...
What's interesting is that's how I started with exploring, life extension, was through the occult, through Tibetan, through Taoist and Taoist, Hindu, and Buddhist meditative techniques, and particularly Taoist alchemy and things of that nature, and Western alchemy. So I find it very interesting that he was drawn to the same thing, although let's let him continue.
Or knowledge about the true nature of things, not about pleasure or something. And it was only by the sacrifice that he made that he could really understand the nature of the universe. So I became an achiever somewhat by being captured by the Faustus modern legend.
Oh, Faustus, leave these frivolous demands which strike a terror to my fainting soul.
What, is great Mephistopheles so passionate at being deprived of the joys of heaven? Learn thou, Faustus, manly fortitude, and scorn those joys thou never shalt possess.
Mankind has 3 old classic dreams. One of them is to travel to the moon and other planets. One is to change one metal into another, such as lead into gold, the old alchemical dream of transmutation of elements. And the third one is to...
Physical immortality was also the alchemical dream, the transmutation of the mortal into the immortal.
achieve physical immortality, or at least to live to a very extended age. Of these 3 classic dreams, the first 2 have been achieved in our own lifespan, our own lifetimes. We are now traveling to the moon and other planets. This is not a dream anymore. We can now change one element into another by advanced physics techniques. This is now achieved. So it's not at all unreasonable to believe that the third dream of living very much longer will be achieved during the span of lives now being lived. And there's much evidence gathering to support this view.
In 1947, Life magazine told how Walford, on the right here, and a buddy hit it big in Reno at the Palace Club and Harold's Club. They figured out a scheme to beat the roulette wheel and walked off with $6,500. Big bucks in 47. But now, 40 years later, the gamble is on life, on making it last for a long time. Walford thinks it's a bet he'll win.
You're in your mid-60s, so you think you're going to live another 60 years, right?
Well, that's the title of the book, and maybe even longer, yes. That's a conservative estimate in general for depending on when one starts on this kind of regime.
What would be an example of something we would eliminate to increase longevity?
Well, you have to cut down on calorie intake and keep the nutritive quality of the diet very high. There are about 50 years of animal experimentation, mainly in rats and mice, but a wide variety of other species, showing pretty uniformly that if you decrease the calorie intake, but at the same time increase the nutritive quality of the diet, that you retard the rate of aging and extend the maximum lifespan substantially. Well, this is a fully fed mouse. He eats as much as he wants to, and he's quite fat and generally slower than the other mouse, and he'll die much sooner. The calorie-restricted mouse, he's been calorie-restricted since time of weaning, is a lot more active and faster moving. He's smaller and healthier. Whoops. And then the other one, I'll just take that off. And you can see the difference in activity of them and the size, and if you can appreciate the coat color. Well, this one is a lot easier to catch than this one, who's... Oops. There we go. So this one will live a lot longer. You can see that his coat is much prettier than the other. He's more unhappy about being suspended that way, and he's generally a much more vigorous and healthy mouse. The question arises whether this is applicable to humans. Well, I think it almost certainly is. To begin with, it works all the way across the animal kingdom. It's not just a rodent experiment or phenomenon.
Keep in mind, it greatly extended the lifespan of those lemurs.
UCLA medical professor Roy Walford is testing out a similar diet on humans. Namely himself and 7 others sealed inside a giant terrarium in Arizona called the Biosphere. 15 months into the experiment, Walford spoke to us from the Biosphere studio.
The results with the blood pressure, blood cholesterol, fasting blood sugar, white blood cell count, since they parallel the same changes that we see in animals, lead me to infer that the present biospherians, if they kept on this diet throughout their lives, would, on the average, live far longer than they would otherwise have lived, and their maximum lifespan would exceed 110 or 120 or 130 years.
Centuries come and go. To be unable to grow old is...
What's interesting is one of the movies that was a great inspiration to me was a movie called Reanimator, which is based on a book by H.P. Lovecraft. I encourage people to watch Reanimator, but if you're squeamish, I would not recommend watching it. I'll just put it that way. It's science fiction / horror.
Terrible. Death is not the worst. There are things more horrible than death. Can you imagine enduring centuries, experiencing each day the same futile things?
Aging is a biological process that we can bring under control pretty well. We can certainly retard it right today, and we might eventually be able to stop it completely. This doesn't mean that people are going to live forever, however, because we'll never be able to do away with accidents. If you do away with everything and people live forever, that is, potentially they live forever, no disease.
Now, what's interesting, he says that, but now that we have the ability to potentially upload consciousness and, download it into, there's this thing called Syndaver, and we can now, 3D print, we can bioprint tissues with our DNA. We could theoretically print a whole functioning human body and download the consciousness from a sick body into a perfectly healthy body that's biologically the same body, genetically speaking. Theoretically. It hasn't been done yet, of course, but it's very interesting to think that way, because science is far more advanced than people want to believe it is. Unfortunately, it's not as advanced as it should be, because that's not where the money is. And that's one of the sad things about capitalism. That's one of the good things about things like the National Institute of Health and the CDC funding research, like Dr. Walford's research, Dr. Wilcox's research, etc. Because that's the kind of research that's going to get us from here to there.
No inherent aging, but accidents remain the same as today. 5% of deaths now are due to accidents. So if that's the only reason that people are dying, how long will they live? And the answer is 600 years. You can calculate it. If that were the only thing killing people, this curve would come across the 0 point at 600. So the idea of a total immortality is out, but the idea of your extended lifespan is in.
Hello, hi, Dr. Walford. Hello, great pleasure.
So Alan, I made 4 servings in the wooden bowl. This is 1 serving, and it's about 550 calories.
This is 1 serving? This is a lot of food.
That would be 1 serving, yes. So
and this is equal to that sandwich?
I'll call this off because we've already watched this in the previous interview. I want to close out this video by encouraging people to read Dr. Walford's books. Okay, I've read Maximum Lifespan and the 120-Year Diet. Other people may want to read The Anti-Aging Plan, the other people might want to read The Longevity Diet. Other people might want to read all of them, but I would strongly encourage people to read all of his works. And this will be the end of this video series for Dr. Walford.